INTJ, the strategist. INTJs observe from a thoughtful distance, processing the world through careful analysis. They value logic and coherence, often detecting inconsistencies and potential problems, while others remain unaware. Their minds constantly work to identify patterns, recognize gaps, and envision more efficient systems. They rarely voice their thoughts immediately. Ideas need time to mature and develop before they consider them ready for sharing. This creates their characteristic quietness. They speak with purpose rather than filling silence. When they do make decisions, the process appears slow to others, but they emerge with well-reasoned conclusions that account for multiple variables and long-term consequences. Conventional approaches hold little appeal when they seem inefficient or wasteful. INTJs operate with focused intensity, though this mental energy rarely shows externally. Their calm exterior can appear detached, even cold, while those who know them well understand the depth of thought occurring underneath. Learning comes naturally when they can grasp underlying principles. They connect disparate concepts easily and prefer understanding the why behind information rather than memorizing surface details. This approach serves them well in complex problem-solving situations. Social interaction depletes their energy reserves, while solitude restores mental clarity. This affects their availability and responsiveness. They need significant alone time to process experiences and recharge. Others may interpret this withdrawal as rejection when it's actually necessary maintenance. Their way of caring differs from typical expressions. Emotional displays feel uncomfortable and messy situations challenge them. Instead, they demonstrate care through problem-solving, practical assistance, and anticipating future needs. They hold high standards for themselves and others, creating internal pressure and occasional friction in relationships. Their expectations stem from seeing potential everywhere, in systems, ideas, and people, which can feel demanding to those who prefer things as they are. Disorder and inefficiency frustrate them, particularly when these create unnecessary delays, yet they maintain composure during chaos and rarely abandon their chosen path once committed. Their thinking naturally extends into long-term timeframes, sometimes causing them to overlook immediate concerns while focusing on future implications. While they may seem rigid, they adapt remarkably well when change serves a logical purpose. They resist arbitrary modifications that lack clear reasoning, preferring stability over change for its own sake. Experience teaches them that pure analysis has limits. Sometimes people need companionship rather than solutions, presence rather than planning. As they embrace this understanding, they develop greater balance, retaining their analytical nature while becoming more receptive to life's uncontrollable elements. Their journey involves learning to trust intuition alongside logic, to value connection alongside efficiency, and to find peace with uncertainty alongside their natural drive for order. INTP, the thinker. INTPs get fascinated by ideas and how things work. Once something catches their interest, they can spend hours diving deep into it, following one thought to another until they've explored every angle. They love figuring out complex problems just for the fun of it. They ask a lot of questions, sometimes ones that make other people uncomfortable. They're not trying to be difficult, they genuinely want to understand. If something doesn't add up or seems inconsistent, they'll keep poking at it until it makes sense. Their interests jump around a lot. They might be obsessed with astronomy one week and ancient history the next. This can make them seem scattered, but they're actually building a huge collection of knowledge that they connect in unexpected ways. They hate being rushed into decisions. Give them time, and they'll come up with creative solutions nobody else thought of. Push them for quick answers, and they'll either freeze up or give you something half-baked that they'll regret later. Rules and authority don't impress them much. They want to know why something matters before they'll follow it. If a rule seems pointless, they'll either ignore it or spend time thinking of better alternatives. They can get so lost in their thoughts that they forget practical things like eating or sleeping. People sometimes think they're absent-minded, but they're just focused on something more interesting than what's happening around them. In conversations, they love exploring ideas but struggle with small talk. They'd rather discuss theories about time travel than talk about the weather. This can make them seem antisocial when they're really just bored by surface-level chat. They're honest to a fault. They'll point out flaws in ideas even when it's not what people want to hear. They don't mean to be harsh. They think everyone wants to get to the truth as much as they do. They need lots of flexibility in how they work and live. Strict schedules and micromanagement kill their motivation, give them freedom to explore, and they'll surprise you with what they come up with. They can be their own worst critics. They see all the holes in their own thinking and worry their ideas aren't good enough. This perfectionism sometimes stops them from sharing brilliant insights because they think they need to work on them more. Over time, they learn that their curiosity and unique perspective are valuable, even when their ideas seem weird to others. They get better at finishing projects and sharing their thoughts, finding ways to bridge the gap between their complex inner world and the practical world around them. ENTJ, the commander. ENTJs see possibilities everywhere and feel compelled to make them happen. When they spot inefficiency or wasted potential, it bothers them until they do something about it. They naturally think about how to organize people and resources to get better results. They're comfortable taking charge, even when nobody asks them to. In group projects, they often end up coordinating everyone else because they can see the big picture and aren't afraid to make decisions. Some people appreciate this, others find it pushy. They talk through their ideas out loud, using conversations to develop their thinking. They'll throw out half-formed thoughts to see how others react, then build on what works. This can make them seem like they're always trying to convince people of something. Deadlines energize them rather than stress them out. They like having clear goals and timelines because it gives them something concrete to work toward. They get frustrated when projects drag on without progress or when people seem content with good enough. They're drawn to leadership roles, but not for the power, for the ability to make things happen. They genuinely believe they can improve situations and aren't shy about sharing their vision with others. Sometimes this comes across as arrogant when they're just being direct. Small talk feels like a waste of time to them. They'd rather jump into meaningful conversations about plans, ideas, or problems that need solving. They use social interactions to exchange information and build useful connections. They can be impatient with people who move slowly or need lots of emotional processing time. They prefer to address problems head-on rather than dancing around feelings. This sometimes hurts relationships when people need more sensitivity. They're competitive, but usually with themselves. They set high standards and push to exceed them. They measure success by what they've accomplished and how much impact they've had. They struggle when they can't control outcomes or when they have to wait for other people to make decisions. Being stuck in bureaucracy or dealing with office politics drains their energy because it feels unproductive. They respect competence and expertise in others. They'll defer to someone who clearly knows more than they do, but they won't follow someone just because of their title or seniority. Over time, they learn that getting things done requires understanding people, not just systems. They develop better listening skills and recognize that sometimes the fastest way forward involves slowing down to bring others along. They become more effective leaders when they balance their drive for results with genuine care for the people, helping them achieve those results. ENTP, the innovator. ENTPs get excited by new ideas and possibilities, then quickly move on to the next interesting thing. They start projects with genuine enthusiasm, but often lose interest once the initial challenge is gone. Their rooms and computers are full of half-finished work. They love playing devil's advocate. They'll argue the opposite side of almost anything, not to be difficult, but because they find it fun to explore different angles. This can be exhausting for people who just want to have a normal conversation without everything turning into a debate. Routine kills their soul. They need variety and change to feel alive. They'll rearrange their schedule, take spontaneous trips, or completely change their approach to work just to avoid feeling trapped by sameness. They're good at reading people and situations, which they sometimes use to their advantage. They know what buttons to push and what to say to get reactions. They find it entertaining to see how people respond to different approaches. They procrastinate on boring or detailed work until the last possible moment. Then they'll pull an all-nighter and somehow deliver something decent. This pattern stresses out everyone around them, but somehow usually works out. They jump between social groups easily and can adapt their personality to fit different crowds. This makes them popular, but sometimes leaves them feeling like nobody really knows the real them. They hate being micromanaged or told exactly how to do things. Give them a goal and let them figure out their own way to get there. Try to control their process and they'll either rebel or lose all motivation. They can be charming and persuasive when they want something. They're good at selling ideas and getting people excited about possibilities. But they're not always great at following through on their promises once the excitement wears off. They get bored easily in relationships and jobs. They need mental stimulation and new challenges to stay engaged. Partners and employers who can't keep up with their need for novelty often feel left behind. They can be thoughtless about other people's feelings. They're so focused on ideas and possibilities that they sometimes forget their words and actions affect real people. They don't mean to hurt anyone, they just don't always think before they speak. Over time, they learn that finishing things matters as much as starting them. They develop systems to help them complete projects and become more aware of how their behavior affects others. They find ways to get the variety they need while still being reliable to the people who count on them. INFJ, the advocate. INFJs have strong gut feelings about people and situations that they can't always explain. They'll get a sense that something is off or that someone isn't being genuine, and they're usually right. This makes them good at reading between the lines, but also suspicious of people's motives. They care deeply about causes and injustices, sometimes to the point where it consumes them. They can become obsessed with fixing problems in the world while neglecting their own needs. They feel personally responsible for making things better, which is both their strength and their burden. They need a lot of alone time to process their thoughts and emotions. Social situations drain them quickly, even when they enjoy them. They often cancel plans at the last minute when they realize they just can't handle being around people. They have impossibly high standards for themselves and get frustrated when they can't live up to their own ideals. They see the gap between how things are and how they could be, and it bothers them constantly. This perfectionism can paralyze them from taking action. They absorb other people's emotions without meaning to. Being around stressed or upset people makes them feel stressed and upset too. They often don't realize where their feelings end and someone else's begin, which can be overwhelming. They want deep, meaningful relationships, but struggle to let people get close. They put up walls and test people to see if they're worthy of trust. Many of their friendships stay surface level because they're afraid of being hurt or misunderstood. They can be judgmental, especially about people they see as shallow or fake. They have little patience for small talk or people who seem to care only about themselves. They write people off quickly if they don't meet their moral standards. They plan obsessively for the future but have trouble living in the present moment. They're always thinking about what could go wrong or how to make things better tomorrow. This makes it hard for them to enjoy what's happening right now. They swing between wanting to help everyone and wanting to disappear completely. They get burned out from caring too much and then withdraw so far that people think they don't care at all. They have a hard time saying no, especially when someone needs help. They'll sacrifice their own well-being to help others, then feel resentful when nobody notices their efforts or appreciates their sacrifices. Over time, they learn to set boundaries and recognize that they can't save everyone. They find ways to care about causes without letting them destroy their peace of mind. They get better at accepting people as they are rather than constantly trying to fix or improve them. INFP, the mediator. INFPs have a rich inner world that's more real to them than what's happening around them. They spend hours daydreaming, creating stories in their head, or imagining how their life could be different. Sometimes they prefer their fantasies to reality because real life feels disappointing or harsh. They feel emotions intensely, both their own and others. A sad movie can ruin their whole day, and they take criticism personally even when it's not meant that way. They experience highs and lows more dramatically than most people, which can be exhausting for them and confusing for others. They procrastinate on almost everything, especially things that don't align with their values or interests. They'll put off important tasks for weeks while spending hours on creative projects or causes they care about. Their priorities don't always make practical sense to other people. They have strong opinions about what's right and wrong, but they rarely share them directly. Instead, they'll quietly judge people who don't live up to their moral standards. They can be surprisingly stubborn when their values are challenged, even though they seem easygoing most of the time. They struggle with routine tasks and practical responsibilities. Paying bills, cleaning, or dealing with bureaucracy feels soul-crushing to them. They'd rather focus on meaningful work or creative pursuits, which means basic life maintenance often gets ignored. They want to be understood but have trouble explaining themselves clearly. They assume others should just get what they mean without having to spell it out. When people don't understand them, they feel frustrated and misunderstood rather than trying to communicate better. They avoid conflict at almost any cost. They'll agree with people to their face and then complain about them later to someone else. They'd rather keep peace than stand up for themselves, which can lead to built-up resentment over time. They're extremely sensitive to criticism and take it as a personal attack on who they are. Even gentle feedback can send them into a spiral of self-doubt. They need a lot of reassurance and positive reinforcement to feel confident about their abilities. They start many creative projects but finish few of them. They get excited about new ideas but lose interest when the work becomes tedious or repetitive. Their living spaces are often cluttered with abandoned hobbies and half-completed projects. They can be passive-aggressive when they're upset. Instead of addressing problems directly, they'll withdraw, give silent treatment, or make subtle comments that hint at their displeasure. They expect others to pick up on these signals and fix the situation. Over time, they learn that their sensitivity and idealism are strengths when channeled properly. They develop better communication skills and find ways to turn their values into meaningful action. They discover that some structure and routine actually helps them accomplish their creative goals rather than limiting them. ENFJ, the protagonist. ENFJs are constantly tuned into other people's emotions and needs, often knowing how someone feels before they do. They can't help but try to fix people's problems or make them feel better. This makes them great friends, but also means they rarely get a break from caring about everyone else's issues. They have a hard time saying no to requests for help, even when they're already overwhelmed. They'll sacrifice their own needs to make others happy, then feel exhausted and resentful when nobody notices their efforts. They give until they have nothing left, then wonder why they feel burned out. They need people to like them and get genuinely upset when someone doesn't. They'll replay conversations over and over, analyzing what they might have said wrong. Criticism hits them hard because they put so much effort into maintaining harmony and being seen as good. They can be manipulative without realizing it. They know exactly what to say to get people to do what they think is best for them. They genuinely believe they're helping, but they sometimes cross boundaries by trying to manage other people's lives and decisions. They struggle with their own negative emotions and often don't know how to process anger, sadness, or frustration in healthy ways. They're so focused on keeping everyone else happy that they ignore their own emotional needs until they explode or shut down completely. They take on too many responsibilities and commitments because they can't stand disappointing people. Their calendars are packed with obligations they don't really want to do but feel guilty about declining. They say yes to everything and then stress about how to fit it all in. They can be judgmental about people who seem selfish or uncaring. They expect others to be as considerate and giving as they try to be, and they get frustrated when people don't live up to their standards of kindness and social responsibility. They have trouble making decisions for themselves because they're always considering how their choices will affect everyone else. They can spend forever weighing options, trying to find the solution that makes everyone happy, which often means nobody gets what they really want. They get their energy from helping others, but can become addicted to being needed. They unconsciously seek out people with problems to solve because it makes them feel valuable and important. This can attract unhealthy relationships where they enable dependency. They struggle with boundaries and often don't know where they end and other people begin. They absorb other people's stress and emotions so completely that they lose track of their own feelings and needs. Over time, they learn that helping others means teaching them to help themselves, not doing everything for them. They develop better boundaries and recognize that taking care of themselves isn't selfish, is necessary for them to keep caring for others effectively. ENFP, the campaigner. ENFPs get excited about everything and want to share that excitement with everyone around them. They'll discover a new hobby, restaurant, or idea and immediately try to get all their friends involved. Their enthusiasm is genuine but can be overwhelming for people who prefer a calmer approach to life. They make friends easily but struggle to maintain deep relationships. They're great at the initial connection and making people feel special, but they get distracted by new people and experiences. Old friends sometimes feel abandoned when they move on to their next source of excitement. They hate routine and will go to great lengths to avoid it. They'll take different routes to work, rearrange their furniture, or completely change their plans just to keep things interesting. This need for variety can make them unreliable when others need consistency from them. They're people pleasers who change their personality depending on who they're with. They want everyone to like them, so they'll emphasize different parts of themselves to fit in with different groups. This can leave them feeling like they don't know who they really are. They start projects with massive enthusiasm, but rarely finish them. Their homes and computers are graveyards of abandoned hobbies, half-written stories, and business ideas they were sure would change their lives. They get bored once the initial novelty wears off. They avoid difficult conversations and uncomfortable emotions. When relationships get complicated or people need serious support, they often disappear or change the subject. They prefer to keep things light and positive, even when situations require more depth. They can be selfish with their time and attention. They'll cancel plans if something more interesting comes up, or they'll be physically present but mentally somewhere else. They don't always consider how their scattered focus affects the people who depend on them. They struggle with practical responsibilities like budgeting, scheduling, or following through on commitments. They live in the moment and assume everything will work out, which often leaves them scrambling to handle things they should have planned for. They need constant validation and get anxious when they're not the center of attention. They'll interrupt conversations, tell dramatic stories, or create situations where people have to focus on them. They don't feel secure unless they're being noticed and appreciated. They can be emotionally manipulative without realizing it. They know how to make people feel guilty for not supporting their latest idea or for wanting them to be more responsible. They use their charm and emotional intelligence to get what they want. Over time, they learn that depth matters as much as breadth. They develop better follow-through skills and recognize that maintaining relationships requires consistent effort, not just initial excitement. They find ways to channel their enthusiasm into meaningful long-term commitments rather than just chasing the next shiny thing. ISTJ, the logistician. ISTJs like things done the right way, which usually means the way they've always been done. They follow established procedures and get frustrated when others take shortcuts or try to reinvent the wheel. They believe there's a proper way to do everything and can't understand why people would choose chaos over order. They're extremely reliable but expect the same from everyone else. When people are late, unprepared, or don't follow through on commitments, it genuinely bothers them. They plan their lives carefully and assume others will do the same, which often leads to disappointment. They resist change, even when it might be beneficial. New systems, processes, or ideas make them uncomfortable because they've invested time learning how things currently work. They need lots of time and evidence before they'll accept that a different approach might be better. They keep their emotions private and expect others to do the same. Public displays of feelings make them uncomfortable, and they don't know how to respond when people get emotional. They show care through actions rather than words, which some people interpret as coldness. They have strong opinions about right and wrong, but rarely share them unless asked directly. They quietly judge people who don't meet their standards of responsibility and proper behavior. They're especially critical of people who seem lazy or disorganized. They stick to routines and traditions because these provide stability and meaning. They celebrate the same holidays the same way every year, shop at the same stores, and follow the same daily patterns. Breaking routine requires significant effort and a good reason. They're practical to a fault and can miss opportunities because they're too focused on potential risks. They'd rather stick with something that works adequately than try something new that might work better. This conservative approach keeps them safe but sometimes holds them back. They have trouble delegating because they don't trust others to do things correctly. They'd rather do everything themselves than deal with the frustration of fixing someone else's mistakes. This leads to them being overworked while others feel micromanaged. They can be inflexible when unexpected situations arise. They prefer having a plan and following it, so when circumstances change suddenly, they get stressed and struggle to adapt. They need time to process changes and develop new approaches. They value competence and hard work above almost everything else. They don't understand people who coast by on charm or natural talent without putting in effort. They believe success should come from dedication and following proper procedures. Over time, they learn that some flexibility actually helps them achieve their goals more effectively. They discover that not every traditional rule serves a useful purpose, and they become more open to gradual changes that improve outcomes. They find ways to maintain their need for structure while adapting to an unpredictable world. ISFJ, the protector. ISFJs notice everything about the people around them, who seems tired, who's stressed, who needs help. They remember birthdays, preferences, and personal details that others forget. But they use this information to constantly worry about everyone else's well-being, often at the expense of their own peace of mind. They have a hard time saying no to requests for help, even when they're already overwhelmed. They'll take on extra work, babysit for friends, or listen to problems for hours because they feel guilty about disappointing people. They sacrifice their own needs so often that they forget what they actually want. They avoid conflict at all costs and will endure unfair treatment rather than speak up for themselves. They assume that being nice and accommodating will eventually be rewarded, but they often end up being taken advantage of by people who see their kindness as weakness. They keep track of everything they do for others and get hurt when their efforts aren't noticed or appreciated. They give gifts, remember important dates, and do thoughtful things expecting some recognition in return. When it doesn't come, they feel unvalued but rarely express this directly. They're extremely sensitive to criticism and take even constructive feedback as a personal attack. They replay negative comments over and over, wondering what they did wrong. They need constant reassurance that they're doing a good job and that people still like them. They resist change because it disrupts their sense of security and their ability to take care of others effectively. New situations make them anxious because they don't know what will be expected of them or how to help people navigate unfamiliar territory. They can be passive-aggressive when they're upset or overwhelmed. Instead of directly asking for help or expressing frustration, they'll make comments about how busy they are or how much they do for everyone else. They expect others to notice their hints and offer assistance. They judge people who seem selfish or inconsiderate, especially those who don't reciprocate kindness. They have high expectations for how people should treat each other and get disappointed when others don't share their values of consideration and helpfulness. They worry constantly about making mistakes or letting people down. They second-guess their decisions and ask for reassurance about things they're perfectly capable of handling. This need for validation can be exhausting for the people close to them. They enable other people's irresponsible behavior by always being there to clean up messes or provide support. They create dependency by making it too easy for others to rely on them instead of learning to handle things themselves. Over time, they learn that taking care of themselves isn't selfish. It's necessary for them to continue caring for others effectively. They develop better boundaries and realize that saying no sometimes actually helps people become more independent and capable. ESTJ, the executive. ESTJs take charge whether they're asked to or not. They see what needs to be done and start organizing people to get it done efficiently. They assume their way is the best way and have little patience for people who want to discuss alternatives or take time to consider other options. They value hard work and results above everything else. They judge people based on what they accomplish rather than their intentions or potential. They have little sympathy for people who struggle with deadlines, make excuses, or can't seem to get their act together. They're blunt and direct in their communication, which often comes across as harsh or insensitive. They don't sugarcoat feedback or waste time on pleasantries when there's work to be done. They assume everyone wants straightforward honesty, even when people need more gentle handling. They stick to traditional methods and established hierarchies because these have proven to work. They respect authority and expect others to do the same. They get frustrated with people who question systems or want to do things differently just for the sake of change. They can be controlling and micromanaging because they don't trust others to meet their standards. They'd rather do things themselves or constantly check on people's progress than risk having something done incorrectly or late. They make decisions quickly based on practical considerations and get impatient with people who need more time to think things through. They see lengthy discussions and emotional processing as wastes of time that prevent progress from being made. They measure their worth by their productivity and achievements. They work long hours and expect others to do the same. They don't understand people who prioritize work-life balance over getting ahead or making more money. They can be insensitive to other people's feelings and emotional needs. They focus on facts and logic rather than considering how their decisions affect people personally. They dismiss concerns that seem irrational or overly emotional to them. They have little tolerance for inefficiency or disorganization. Messy workspaces, unclear procedures, or people who can't follow simple instructions genuinely irritate them. They believe most problems could be solved with better planning and more discipline. They expect recognition for their efforts and get frustrated when their hard work goes unnoticed. They want to be respected for their competence and leadership abilities, and they can become resentful if they feel undervalued or unappreciated. Over time, they learn that getting the best results from people requires understanding their individual motivations and working styles. They discover that some flexibility in their approach actually helps them achieve their goals more effectively than rigid adherence to rules and procedures. ESFJ, the consul. ESFJs need everyone to get along and will go to great lengths to maintain harmony, even when conflict might actually be healthy or necessary. They smooth over problems instead of addressing them directly, which often makes situations worse in the long run but keeps immediate peace. They're extremely concerned with what other people think of them and will change their behavior to fit in with different groups. They want to be liked and accepted so badly that they sometimes lose track of their own opinions and preferences in the process. They take everything personally and assume that other people's bad moods or problems are somehow their fault. If someone seems upset, they'll immediately start thinking about what they might have done wrong and how they can fix it, even when it has nothing to do with them. They remember every slight, criticism, or moment when they felt unappreciated. They keep mental tallies of who has been kind to them and who hasn't, and they hold grudges longer than they care to admit. They just hide their resentment behind a pleasant exterior. They can be manipulative in their efforts to help people. They'll guilt-trip others into making better choices or use emotional appeals to get people to do what they think is best for them. They genuinely believe they're helping, but they cross boundaries in the process. They gossip and get involved in other people's business because they're genuinely interested in everyone's lives. They collect and share information about mutual friends, often justifying it as caring or concern when it's really just nosiness. They struggle with people who are different from them or who don't share their values about relationships and social harmony. They can be judgmental about people who seem selfish, antisocial, or who don't put effort into maintaining friendships. They overcommit themselves to social obligations and then feel overwhelmed and resentful. They say yes to every invitation, volunteer for every committee, and try to be everything to everyone, which leaves them exhausted and stressed. They have trouble making decisions without consulting everyone else first. They want to know what their friends, family, and colleagues think before they can feel confident about their choices. This need for consensus can paralyze them when people disagree. They can be controlling about social situations and get upset when things don't go according to their plans. They have specific ideas about how gatherings should work and how people should behave, and they get stressed when others don't follow their unspoken rules. Over time, they learn that they can't control other people's happiness, and that trying to do so actually makes relationships more stressful. They develop better boundaries and realize that some conflict is normal and healthy in relationships rather than something that needs to be avoided at all costs. ISTP, the virtuoso. ISTPs live in the moment and do whatever feels right at the time, which makes them unpredictable and sometimes unreliable. They'll make plans and then completely change their mind if something more interesting comes up. They don't see this as flaky, they just follow their impulses and expect others to understand. They're good with their hands and love figuring out how things work, but they get bored quickly once they've mastered something. Their garages and basements are full of half-finished projects and hobbies they abandoned once the challenge was gone. They move on to the next interesting thing without looking back. They avoid emotional conversations and situations that require them to talk about feelings. When people get upset or need emotional support, they either disappear or try to fix the problem practically rather than providing comfort. They don't know what to do with tears or drama. They can be blunt and tactless without meaning to hurt anyone. They say exactly what they're thinking without considering how it might sound to others. They value honesty and efficiency over politeness, which sometimes damages relationships they actually care about. They hate being told what to do and will rebel against authority just on principle. Even reasonable rules and expectations feel restrictive to them. They'd rather face consequences than follow someone else's timeline or methods, which often gets them in trouble at work or school. They're selfish with their time and energy and don't feel obligated to help others unless they want to. They won't volunteer for group projects, attend social events they find boring, or do favors just to be nice. They prioritize their own interests and assume others should do the same. They can be moody and withdrawn when they're stressed or overwhelmed. Instead of talking about what's bothering them, they shut down and become even more distant than usual. People around them never know if they're upset about something or just being their normal, quiet selves. They make decisions based on logic and facts, but ignore the human element. They'll choose the most efficient solution even if it hurts people's feelings or creates social problems. They don't consider emotions to be valid factors in decision-making. They procrastinate on anything that doesn't interest them, including important responsibilities. They'll put off paperwork, appointments, or maintenance tasks until the last possible moment, then scramble to handle everything at once. They can be reckless and impulsive, especially when they're bored or looking for excitement. They'll try dangerous activities, make sudden major life changes, or take risks without thinking through the consequences. They live for the adrenaline rush of new experiences. Over time, they learn that their independence doesn't have to mean isolation from others. They discover that some structure and planning actually gives them more freedom in the long run, and they find ways to balance their need for autonomy with their responsibilities to other people. ISFP, the adventurer. ISFPs are extremely sensitive and take everything to heart. A casual comment or mild criticism can ruin their entire day and send them into a spiral of self-doubt. They replay negative interactions over and over, assuming the worst about what people meant or how they're perceived. They avoid confrontation at all costs and will endure unfair treatment rather than speak up for themselves. They'd rather suffer in silence than risk upsetting anyone or making waves. This makes them easy targets for people who take advantage of their reluctance to fight back. They're moody and unpredictable, switching between being warm and engaged to cold and distant without warning. Their emotions change quickly based on their environment and the people around them, which confuses others who never know which version of them they'll encounter. They can be selfish and self-absorbed, focusing so much on their own feelings and experiences that they miss what's happening with other people. They assume everyone thinks the way they do and get surprised when others have different perspectives or needs. They procrastinate on practical responsibilities and adult tasks because these feel overwhelming or meaningless to them. Bills pile up, appointments get missed, and important paperwork gets ignored while they focus on creative pursuits or things that feel more personally meaningful. They hold grudges and can be passive-aggressive when they feel wronged. Instead of addressing problems directly, they'll withdraw, give cold shoulders, or make subtle comments designed to make the other person feel guilty. They expect others to figure out what's wrong without having to explain it. They're judgmental about people who seem fake or don't share their values, especially around authenticity and creativity. They write people off as shallow or materialistic without getting to know them, assuming they're morally superior because they prioritize art and feelings over practical concerns. They can be flaky and unreliable when commitments conflict with their mood or personal interests. They'll cancel plans last minute if they don't feel like socializing or abandon projects when they lose inspiration, leaving others to pick up the pieces. They struggle with criticism of their creative work or personal choices and take it as an attack on their identity. They can't separate feedback about their output from judgment about who they are as a person, which makes it hard for them to improve or collaborate with others. They idealize relationships and situations, then become disappointed when reality doesn't match their fantasies. They expect deep connections and perfect understanding from others, and they withdraw when people inevitably fail to meet these unrealistic expectations. Over time, they learn that their sensitivity can be a strength when paired with better communication skills. They discover that some structure and follow-through actually helps them achieve their creative goals, and they find ways to express their values through consistent action rather than just internal feelings. ESTP, the entrepreneur. ESTPs live for the moment and rarely think about consequences until they're dealing with them. They'll make impulsive decisions about money, relationships, or career moves because something feels exciting in the moment. They assume everything will work out somehow and are often surprised when their choices create problems later. They get bored easily and need constant stimulation to feel alive. They'll start new projects, relationships, or adventures with enthusiasm but lose interest once the novelty wears off. Their lives are littered with abandoned commitments and half-finished endeavors that seemed important at the time. They can be insensitive and tactless, saying whatever comes to mind without considering how it affects other people. They value honesty and directness but don't always deliver it kindly. They often hurt feelings without realizing it and get confused when people react emotionally to their bluntness. They avoid anything that feels like deep, emotional processing or serious long-term planning. They'd rather keep things light and fun than deal with heavy conversations about relationships, future goals, or personal problems. They get uncomfortable when situations require sustained emotional depth. They're competitive and can be sore losers when things don't go their way. They need to win or be the center of attention, and they'll sometimes bend rules or manipulate situations to maintain their advantage. They take games, contests, and casual competitions more seriously than others expect. They can be reckless with their health, money, and safety because they're focused on immediate gratification. They'll eat poorly, skip exercise, overspend, or engage in risky behaviors because future consequences feel abstract and unimportant compared to present enjoyment. They struggle with people who are slower paced or need time to process information. They get impatient with detailed explanations, lengthy meetings, or anyone who can't keep up with their quick decision-making style. they often steamroll over quieter people without realizing it. They can be unreliable when commitments conflict with more interesting opportunities. They'll change plans, cancel appointments, or abandon responsibilities if something better comes along. They don't see this as letting people down, they see it as being flexible and spontaneous. They avoid conflict by either joking their way out of serious situations or simply leaving when things get too intense. They prefer to keep relationships casual and fun rather than working through difficult issues that require patience and sustained effort. They can be superficial in their relationships, preferring wide social circles over deep connections. They enjoy meeting new people and having exciting experiences together, but they struggle with the day-to-day maintenance that intimate relationships require. Over time, they learn that some planning and follow-through actually creates more opportunities for the excitement they crave. They discover that building deeper relationships and considering long-term consequences doesn't have to kill their spontaneity, it can actually enhance their ability to enjoy life fully. ESFP, the entertainer. ESFPs need to be the center of attention and will do whatever it takes to get people looking at them. They'll tell dramatic stories, create minor crises, or interrupt conversations to redirect focus back to themselves. They get anxious and uncomfortable when they're not being noticed or entertained. They make decisions based on their feelings in the moment without thinking about long-term consequences. They'll quit jobs they don't like, end relationships that feel boring, or make major purchases because something feels right at the time. They deal with the fallout later and are often surprised by the mess they've created. They take criticism extremely personally and can't separate feedback about their actions from attacks on their character. Even gentle suggestions for improvement can send them into emotional spirals where they feel completely rejected and misunderstood. They avoid anything that feels like hard work or requires sustained mental effort. They'll procrastinate on important tasks, skip steps in processes, or find ways to make other people handle the boring parts. They want results without putting in the grinding, unglamorous effort that most achievements require. They can be manipulative with their emotions, using tears, anger, or charm to get what they want from people. They've learned that their emotional reactions have power over others, and they use this to avoid consequences or get special treatment. They're terrible with money and practical planning because these things feel restrictive and boring. They'll overspend on things that make them feel good in the moment, ignore budgets, and assume financial problems will somehow resolve themselves without planning or sacrifice. They can be shallow and judgmental about people who don't fit their idea of fun or interesting. They dismiss quiet, serious, or introverted people as boring without giving them a chance. They value entertainment value over depth or substance in their relationships. They spread themselves too thin, trying to be involved in everything and please everyone. They say yes to every invitation and opportunity, then become overwhelmed and stressed when they can't handle all their commitments. They create chaos in their schedules and then expect others to accommodate their poor planning. They avoid difficult emotions or situations by staying constantly busy with social activities and entertainment. They'd rather party, shop, or travel than deal with serious problems or uncomfortable feelings. This avoidance often makes problems worse over time. They can be unreliable and flaky when their mood changes or something more interesting comes along. They'll cancel plans, abandon projects, or disappear from commitments without considering how this affects other people who are counting on them. Over time, they learn that sustainable happiness requires some planning and follow-through, not just constant stimulation. They discover that deeper relationships and meaningful achievements actually provide more lasting satisfaction than superficial entertainment and attention-seeking behavior.